Happiness is not something that waits for perfect moments. It's something you can choose, practice and protect every day, even when life is tough. Have you ever noticed how easily bad news, mistakes, or stressful situations take over your mood? Most people believe happiness comes from external things, but that's why it often feels out of reach. The truth is, you can feel calm, confident, and content even when everything around you seems chaotic. Imagine being able to wake up, handle challenges without losing control, and end the day knowing you did your best to keep your mind steady. This video will show how to take charge of your thoughts, respond to problems intentionally, and build daily habits that keep your happiness alive no matter what happens. You will learn how to stop letting life dictate your feelings and start making choices that protect your peace. By the time you finish watching, you will realize happiness isn't a reward, it's a skill, a daily decision, and something you can get better at each day. You can start right now, and it will change the way you face life forever. Chapter 1. Accept today honestly before trying to feel better. Most people start their day with a subtle argument inside their own minds. The alarm rings, and immediately the thoughts begin. There is a mental list of tasks, responsibilities, problems, and uncertainties. The body wakes up tired, the mind wakes up worried, and the heart carries tension from yesterday. Almost instinctively, people begin resisting the way the day feels before it has even begun. They tell themselves they need to be positive, energetic, and focused, even when they are not. That resistance, though subtle, shapes the entire experience of the day. It creates tension that builds quietly, often unnoticed, until it leaks into mood, decisions, and interactions. Accepting today honestly is about ending that internal argument. It is about observing what exists without immediate judgment or denial. It is about recognizing fatigue, stress, worry, or disappointment as real experiences rather than evidence of failure. Accepting today honestly begins with noticing. It requires pausing long enough to observe the body, the mind, and the emotions without immediately trying to change them. The body may feel heavy. The mind may feel scattered. The heart may feel uneasy. Each of these sensations is a signal, not a problem. Observing them is an act of awareness. Awareness itself reduces the intensity of discomfort because it separates experience from judgment. It draws attention to the present moment instead of allowing the mind to chase future outcomes or past regret. The act of observing without judgment creates a form of internal calm, which is the foundation for happiness even when life is hard. Many people fear that noticing discomfort will make it worse. They believe acknowledging stress or sadness is equivalent to giving in to it. The opposite is true. Avoiding or suppressing emotions increases tension and prolongs discomfort. Resistance is exhausting. It activates the nervous system, keeps muscles tight, and keeps thoughts racing. Accepting what is present reduces internal friction. It allows the body to relax slightly, the breath to deepen, and the mind to pause. This pause is not laziness, it is strategic. It is the moment when clarity begins to emerge and wise decisions become possible. Acceptance also requires separating facts from interpretation. Feeling anxious is a fact. Believing anxiety means failure is an interpretation. Feeling tired is a fact. Believing tiredness makes a person weak is interpretation. Observing facts without adding judgment is a skill. It allows for clarity of thought and prevents unnecessary suffering. It creates an internal environment where problem solving becomes possible rather than reactionary behavior taking over. This distinction between experience and judgment is a cornerstone of psychological resilience. One of the most important aspects of accepting today honestly is adjusting expectations. Most people carry unrealistic assumptions into every day. They expect energy, focus, and emotional stability regardless of circumstances. They expect outcomes to match effort immediately. These expectations create disappointment when reality does not comply. Adjusting expectations to match actual conditions reduces frustration. Reduced frustration improves emotional balance and opens space for gratitude, focus, and meaningful action. Happiness does not require perfection. It requires honesty. Honesty also supports decision-making. When the mind is free from self-denial, it can make choices appropriate to the current state. A tired person may choose to rest instead of overexerting. A stressed person may simplify tasks instead of attempting complexity. A sad person may focus on care and recovery rather than forcing productivity. Accepting today honestly informs practical decisions that support stability, growth, and emotional well-being. Decisions made from awareness are more likely to lead to positive outcomes than decisions made from denial or resistance. Acceptance is also deeply connected to self-compassion. A person who recognizes their own fatigue, frustration, or stress without judgment begins to build trust with themselves. Trust fosters a sense of safety that allows the nervous system to regulate and the mind to focus. This self-compassion prevents harsh internal criticism, which is often more damaging than the external difficulties themselves. Feeling understood and acknowledged internally allows a person to approach challenges with steadiness rather than panic, agitation, or shame. Another consequence of honest acceptance is the reduction of comparison. People often measure their progress, energy, or mood against others. They look at someone else's accomplishments, productivity, or visible happiness and feel inadequate. Acceptance shifts attention inward. It emphasizes understanding personal experience without constant comparison. When the focus is on reality rather than perception of others, dissatisfaction naturally diminishes. Contentment begins to appear because the mind is not occupied with measuring itself against external standards that may be inaccurate or irrelevant. Accepting today honestly also strengthens patience. Life rarely unfolds perfectly, and progress is rarely immediate. Recognizing the state of today allows a person to pace themselves rather than pushing against the current moment. Patience reduces pressure on both the mind and body, which prevents fatigue and burnout. It also allows for measured effort, which leads to more sustainable results. When action emerges from patience rather than urgency or avoidance, it becomes more effective and more aligned with long-term goals. Emotionally, honest acceptance transforms internal dialogue. People often carry repetitive thoughts that criticize, predict doom, or exaggerate difficulty. Accepting today allows those thoughts to be observed without judgment. Observing thoughts without reacting to them reduces emotional reactivity. Emotional regulation improves because energy is not spent fighting internal stories. The mind becomes a clearer tool for action and reflection rather than a battlefield of internal conflict. Acceptance is not passive, it is not resignation. It does not mean giving up on improvement or avoiding responsibility. Instead, it provides a realistic foundation for meaningful action. When the mind is honest about the current state, it can prioritize actions that are feasible, sustainable, and effective. Effort becomes more focused. Energy is preserved. Productivity and emotional stability improve simultaneously. The paradox is that accepting difficulty enables better movement through it, rather than resisting and exhausting oneself. Accepting today honestly also influences relationships. People who resist their own emotions often project tension onto others. They may react sharply, argue unnecessarily, or withdraw emotionally. Awareness of one's own state reduces reactive behavior and increases capacity for empathy. Interactions become clearer, calmer, and more intentional. Others respond positively to this steadiness, which reinforces a supportive environment. A day approached with honesty and calm improves not only internal experience, but external dynamics as well. Physically, the act of acceptance manifests in subtle changes. Muscles release tension, breathing slows, posture relaxes, and the heart rate stabilizes. These bodily adjustments reinforce mental clarity. The body and mind are interconnected, and the release of physical tension supports emotional regulation. Over time, this connection strengthens, making acceptance a habit that automatically reduces stress and increases resilience. Simple acknowledgement of reality creates measurable effects on both body and mind. Acceptance also shifts perception of setback. Difficult moments are not inherently catastrophic when they are approached with honesty. Challenges are viewed as information rather than proof of inadequacy. This perspective allows for practical problem solving without unnecessary emotional escalation. It reduces fear, discouragement, and impulsive decisions. Approach to life becomes more consistent and grounded because the response is intentional rather than reactive. This steadiness is a core contributor to daily happiness. Over time, accepting today honestly builds self-reliance. A person learns to respond effectively to internal and external conditions without depending on external validation. Stability comes from within. Emotional security does not vanish when circumstances are difficult because it has been cultivated independent. That internal foundation is what sustains happiness through both small frustrations and significant challenges. This approach also improves mental clarity. When the mind is not clouded by resistance or denial, thinking becomes sharper. Priorities emerge more clearly. Tasks are approached in a measured and efficient way. The energy that would have been wasted on arguing with reality is redirected toward meaningful action. Happiness grows not from forced positivity, but from competence, clarity, and alignment with what is possible. Acceptance fosters a sense of control. Even when external conditions are difficult, acknowledging reality provides authority over internal experience. People often feel helpless because they deny the state of things and then struggle to respond effectively. Acceptance restores agency. Agency itself improves mood, reduces stress, and increases satisfaction. Knowing that one can navigate the day, even if it is challenging, is a fundamental psychological need that directly supports happiness. Honesty about today also improves resilience. Life is unpredictable. Loss, disappointment, and pressure are unavoidable. Accepting the present moment as it is allows a person to meet difficulties with steadiness. Emotional resilience grows because experiences are not magnified by denial or self-criticism. Resilience enables a person to maintain composure, make better decisions, and continue acting toward meaningful goals, which sustains a sense of purpose and well-being. Acceptance is also tied to reflection, observing how the day feels, acknowledging emotions and physical sensations, and noting responses provides insight for future decisions. This ongoing reflection strengthens self-awareness and improves strategies for coping with stress. Insights gained from daily honesty compound over time, producing more effective behavior, emotional balance, and consistent happiness. Finally, accepting today honestly is the beginning of practical happiness. It does not require external circumstances to be perfect. It does not require high energy, perfect mood, or immediate success. It requires awareness, honesty, and steady attention to reality. That awareness produces calm, clarity, competence, and confidence. These qualities are not dependent on luck or circumstance. They are skills that grow with practice. Happiness becomes sustainable because it is rooted in the ability to respond effectively to life as it actually is, rather than how one wishes it would be. The moment a person begins to accept today honestly, they stop arguing with reality and gain the freedom to live fully.
respond wisely, and experience contentment even when life is hard.
Chapter 2. Ground yourself daily when life feels overwhelming. Life can become heavy quickly. There are moments when everything feels too fast, too loud, too demanding, and too uncertain. Tasks pile up, problems multiply, and emotions feel like they are on the edge of overflowing. During these moments, it is easy to feel scattered, anxious, and disconnected from yourself. When the mind races ahead of reality, the body reacts with tension, the heart feels compressed, and a decision becomes more difficult. Grounding yourself daily is the process of returning to a stable center, a calm place where observation replaces reaction and clarity replaces chaos. It is a skill, a habit, and a choice that can be developed through deliberate attention to what is present. Grounding begins with awareness of the body. Most people spend their days entirely in their thoughts, replaying events, planning ahead, or worrying about outcomes. The body becomes an afterthought, in it until it sends signals of discomfort, fatigue, or stress. Paying attention to the body reconnects the mind to the present. Feeling your feet on the floor, noticing the weight of your body in the chair, or observing the rhythm of your breath immediately provides a sense of stability. These physical anchors signal to the brain that there is a safe point to return to, a foundation that exists independent of mental turbulence. The breath is one of the most powerful tools for grounding. Breathing is continuous, automatic, and immediately accessible. Consciously observing the inhale and exhale slows the rhythm of thoughts. Each measured breath communicates to the nervous system that there is no immediate threat and that the body can relax. Breathing with attention transforms a scattered mind into one capable of focus. When life feels overwhelming, returning to the breath provides a simple yet profound method to regain composure, clarity, and readiness for action. Sensory attention strengthens grounding. Senses are an underused pathway back to stability. Listening to the sounds around you, noticing the textures of objects, feeling the temperature of the air, or observing colors and shapes quietly redirects attention from chaotic thoughts to tangible reality. This simple redirection reduces the intensity of worry and mental spinning. The mind, when connected to immediate experience, begins to settle, which reduces emotional turbulence and supports clearer thinking. Each sensory detail becomes a tether to the present, keeping the mind from drifting into unproductive narrative. Emotional labeling is an additional component of grounding. Strong emotions are not eliminated by awareness alone. They require acknowledgement and naming. Recognizing, for example, that frustration is present rather than suppressing it allows the intensity to decrease naturally. Identifying fear, irritation, or sadness provides mental clarity. When the mind has a clear understanding of the emotional landscape, decisions become more intentional rather than impulsive. Awareness of emotions without judgment reduces the likelihood of reactive behaviors and increases the ability to act constructively. Daily routines support grounding. Life rarely feels overwhelming when there are consistent, reliable patterns in place. Routines provide structure to both the mind and the body. Waking up at a consistent time, dedicating periods to reflection, movement and rest, and organizing tasks in a realistic sequence prevent feelings of being scattered. Consistency fosters predictability, and predictability reduces stress. A person who grounds themselves daily through habits builds a sense of control over their experience, regardless of external challenges. Movement and physical engagement are also critical. The body carries tension accumulated from prolonged mental activity, stress, and emotional overload. Simple physical practices such as stretching, walking, or gentle exercise release this tension. Movement signals to the brain that energy can be redistributed productively. Physical engagement combined with mindful awareness integrates the mind and body, reinforcing stability. A grounded body fosters a grounded mind, which in turn supports emotional balance. Attention to the environment contributes to daily grounding. Spaces that are chaotic or cluttered can exacerbate mental overwhelm. Maintaining physical spaces with order, clarity, and simplicity has a direct impact on mental states. A clean, organized environment reduces cognitive load and enhances focus. Visual clarity translates to mental clarity. Individuals who pay attention to both inner and outer environments strengthen their capacity to remain centered despite external pressures. Connection with reality is also reinforced by grounding practices. Life often feels overwhelming because the mind projects into the past or future excessively. Grounding draws attention to what is real in the present, sensations, perceptions, and immediate circumstances. This focus on reality diminishes unnecessary mental elaboration and reduces the power of anxiety, worry, and rumination. When a person is consistently rooted in what actually exists, they develop resilience that does not depend on favorable conditions. Mindful pauses are an important part of establishing daily grounding. Pausing deliberately before responding to events allows reflection and prevents reactive behavior. In stressful moments, taking a few seconds to observe breath, posture, and current emotions interrupts automatic patterns of tension and impulsivity. This brief pause enhances clarity, ensures more thoughtful action, and strengthens emotional regulation. Over time, frequent mindful pauses develop into a habit, creating an ongoing buffer against overwhelming feelings. Grounding also requires mental prioritization. When life feels too much, attempting to address everything simultaneously creates chaos. Identifying what requires immediate attention and what can be deferred provides structure to the day. By focusing on achievable tasks, energy is preserved and accomplishment is reinforced. Each completed task, however small, reinforces competence, reduces mental clutter, and strengthens emotional equilibrium. Grounding is sustained through clarity of action, as well as clarity of awareness. Self-reflection complements the physical and mental aspects of grounding. Taking time each day to review experiences, thoughts, and emotional reactions provides insight into patterns that contribute to overwhelm. Awareness of these patterns allows for proactive adjustment, reducing the recurrence of the same stress. Reflection deepens understanding of how the mind reacts to pressure and builds strategies for resilience. Each reflective moment reinforces mastery over experience rather than submission to circumstance. Journaling or written expression is a practical tool for daily grounding. Articulating thoughts on paper separates them from immediate mental processing and allows analysis without emotional entanglement. Writing provides clarity and perspective. It allows the brain to organize scattered ideas into coherent structure. When thoughts are externalized in writing, they lose some of their intensity, freeing attention and reducing mental strain. This practice is particularly effective during periods of high stress. Attention to sensory habits also enhances grounding. Simple actions such as drinking water slowly, chewing food deliberately, or feeling the texture of clothing can draw awareness into the body. These actions, while mundane, provide micro moments of presence that prevent the mind from drifting into overwhelming narrative. Daily integration of these small, concrete actions reinforces an ongoing sense of stability that persists throughout fluctuating circumstances. Grounding requires emotional honesty. Pretending to feel calm or capable when overwhelmed increases internal conflict. Admitting to oneself, "I feel scattered," or "I am anxious," reduces internal pressure. Emotional honesty does not mean indulgence in distress. It means acknowledging what exists in order to respond wisely. Recognition of emotional reality improves decision-making, strengthens coping capacity, and prevents escalation of stress into exhaustion. Interpersonal interaction is influenced by grounding.
People who maintain stability in their own awareness respond to others more effectively. They listen carefully, speak with clarity, and provide support without overreacting. Stability and personal presence create safety for those around them. Relationships function more smoothly when individuals are internally centered, which reduces external conflict and fosters collaboration, empathy, and mutual respect. Grounding also improves adaptability. Life is unpredictable, and circumstances often change suddenly. A grounded person is better able to adjust without panic because their internal resources are stable. Flexibility in thought and behavior arises from a secure internal foundation. Emotional stability provides a buffer that allows practical adjustment rather than impulsive or destructive reaction. Each day spent strengthening grounding skills increases the capacity to navigate uncertainty without being overwhelmed. Practices that integrate multiple aspects of grounding are particularly effective. Combining breath awareness with mindful movement, attention to sensory input, and deliberate reflection reinforces internal cohesion. Repetition of these integrated practices establishes neural pathways that make grounding more automatic over time. The more consistently a person practices daily grounding, the more resilient they become to stress, change, and emotional turbulence. Grounding also supports long-term mental clarity. When attention is anchored in the present, decisions are made from an accurate assessment of reality. Thinking becomes more deliberate, solutions more rational, and actions more strategic. Long-term planning is not abandoned, but it is approached from a grounded place rather than reactive anxiety. This approach produces consistent progress and reduces the emotional cost of decision-making under pressure. Spiritual or philosophical grounding, when aligned with personal beliefs, can reinforce daily stability. Reflecting on values, purpose, and priority provides perspective that transcends immediate stresses. Connection with a deeper sense of meaning reduces the intensity of temporary difficulty. Individuals who integrate reflective grounding practices with their belief systems gain additional emotional support and mental resilience. This dimension of grounding provides strength beyond immediate circumstances. Grounding is a habit built over time. Daily repetition strengthens the capacity to maintain composure when life is chaotic. It reduces susceptibility to emotional extremes and improves overall psychological resilience. People who prioritize grounding do not avoid challenges. They face them with a clear mind, regulated body, and steady emotions. Their capacity to act thoughtfully increases, and their experience of life becomes less dictated by external pressures and more guided by internal clarity. Ultimately, grounding daily is a form of self-respect and self-preservation. It signals that one values clarity, control, and emotional balance. It allows for measured action, informed decisions, and sustainable energy use. Grounding reduces unnecessary suffering, protects mental resources, and supports emotional well-being. Even when life feels overwhelming, it provides a stable point to return to, a foundation that strengthens with each practice. Through consistent daily grounding, a person cultivates the ability to remain present, resilient, and capable of engaging with the day intentionally, thoughtfully, and calmly, building a foundation for sustained happiness despite external pressure.
Chapter 3. Decide your response before problems decide for you. Life presents challenges constantly, often without warning, and most people respond to these challenges instinctively rather than deliberately. Problems arrive in many forms: unexpected news, conflicts, setbacks, or internal struggles, and when unprepared, the default reaction tends to be reactive. Reactivity often amplifies difficulties, generates unnecessary stress, and creates consequences that extend far beyond the initial issue. Deciding your response before problems decide for you means establishing a mental framework that allows you to meet each situation with clarity, control, and intentional action. It is not about ignoring challenges or pretending they do not exist. It is about creating a space between stimulus and reaction, where reason and awareness govern behavior. This approach transforms adversity from a force that controls you into an experience you navigate consciously, preserving emotional balance and increasing effectiveness in life. The first step in deciding your response is understanding that every problem triggers instinctual patterns. When something goes wrong, the body and mind often default to stress responses, tension, heightened alertness, racing thoughts, or defensive emotions. Recognizing these patterns is essential. Awareness of habitual reactions allows you to identify when reactivity is taking over. Once these automatic responses are observed, it becomes possible to pause and choose a deliberate course of action. This pause, although brief, is where control is regained. It is where a conscious decision replaces unconscious reaction, turning what could be a moment of turmoil into a point of strategic response. Problems are rarely neutral. They are filtered through personal perception, beliefs, and expectation. A financial setback may feel catastrophic to one person and manageable to another. A critical comment may provoke anger in one mind and curiosity in another. Deciding your response requires acknowledging that perception shapes experience. By assessing problems objectively rather than emotionally, the mind creates room for rational and productive action. Evaluating facts separately from interpretation is a key psychological skill that allows a person to act based on reality instead of distorted assumptions or emotional amplification. Control over responses begins with emotional awareness. Strong feelings are inevitable when difficulties arise, but they do not have to dictate actions. Identifying emotions such as frustration, fear, or disappointment as they emerge allows the mind to regulate rather than be driven by them. Recognizing emotional currents gives clarity about the underlying concerns that need attention. Emotional awareness also prevents impulsive decisions that may temporarily relieve tension but worsen outcomes in the long term. By naming and understanding feelings, you reclaim authority over behavior. Cognitive rehearsal is a practical technique to prepare responses in advance. Mentally envisioning challenging situations and planning reactions develops a readiness that strengthens decision-making under pressure. This does not mean imagining catastrophic scenarios excessively. It means considering likely difficulties and clarifying preferred actions. When problems arrive, the mind already has a set of rational options ready. This preparation reduces panic, increases confidence, and prevents energy from being wasted in reactionary chaos. Responsibility is an essential part of deciding responses. Taking responsibility for actions, choices, and consequences strengthens agency. Many people unconsciously blame circumstances, others, or bad luck, relinquishing control of the situation. When response is treated as a personal choice, power shifts back to the individual. Responsibility empowers the mind to act intentionally, rather than be swept along by external forces. Each decision becomes a demonstration of self-control and personal competence, rather than surrender to circumstance. Anticipating consequences enhances deliberate response. Every action produces results, intended or otherwise. Reacting impulsively often produces ripple effects that escalate problems or create additional challenges. By considering likely outcomes before responding, decisions are aligned with long-term objectives rather than immediate emotional relief. This foresight is a key factor in maintaining stability and ensuring that responses contribute to resolution rather than compounding difficulties. Time is a critical ally in response management. Immediate reactions are rarely as effective as measured ones. Allowing a short period to observe, reflect, and assess reduces the influence of raw emotion and increases clarity. This does not mean avoidance or procrastination, but rather a strategic pause that permits evaluation and planning. Time provides perspective, enables prioritization, and ensures that energy is allocated to what matters most, rather than dissipated on impulsive reaction. The ability to choose a response is strengthened by clarity of values and priority. When a person knows what matters most, relationships, integrity, health, or goals, they can evaluate problems and responses through that lens. This alignment prevents distractions by less important concerns or by pressure from external influences. Decisions become more consistent, intentional, and resilient because they are guided by internal principles rather than fluctuating moods or circumstance-driven impulses. Communication plays a vital role in response. Problems often involve others, whether in conflict, misunderstanding, or collaborative effort to resolve difficulties. Choosing how to respond verbally and non-verbally impacts outcomes significantly. Pausing to consider tone, words, and timing prevents escalation and fosters constructive dialogue. Clear, calm, and deliberate communication reduces misunderstanding, strengthens relationships, and increases the likelihood of cooperative resolution. The choice of response extends beyond internal regulation to the external expression of intention. Problem-solving requires prioritization. Not every aspect of a problem demands immediate attention. Identifying what can be addressed, what can be postponed, and what may require delegation prevents overwhelm. When response is deliberate, energy is directed to areas that produce meaningful impact, and unnecessary stress is minimized. This prioritization is a mental skill that combines awareness, clarity, and strategic evaluation, ensuring that actions are purposeful rather than reactionary. Self-reflection deepens the ability to respond effectively. After encountering difficulties, reviewing choices and actions reinforces learning. Reflection provides insight into patterns of reactivity, highlights successful strategies, and identifies areas for improvement. Over time, this process strengthens intuition and judgment, making future responses faster, wiser, and more resilient. Reflection is not self-criticism. It is an honest evaluation that builds competence and emotional control. Boundaries contribute to deliberate response. Recognizing limits, emotional, physical, or temporal, prevents overextension and preserves resources necessary for effective action. Without clear boundaries, the mind is vulnerable to unnecessary stress, distractions, and reactive decisions. Setting limits allows focused energy to address challenges efficiently. Boundaries are a form of self-respect that ensures the mind and body remain capable of handling the pressures that inevitably arise. Grounding techniques reinforce choice under stress. Returning attention to breath, bodily sensation, or immediate environment reduces anxiety and mental spinning. A grounded state provides clarity for evaluating options and selecting appropriate response. Grounding prevents the escalation of emotion, ensuring that decisions are deliberate rather than dictated by stress or fear. Practicing grounding consistently enhances resilience and equips the mind to maintain composure in the face of unexpected challenges. Flexibility is critical in response management. Problems rarely fit neat categories or predictable patterns. Adhering rigidly to a single approach can exacerbate difficulty. A deliberate response involves assessing the situation, identifying multiple options, and adapting based on feedback. Flexibility allows for course correction, learning in real time, and reducing unnecessary resistance. The ability to adjust intentionally strengthens control and reduces the emotional cost of challenges. Perspective taking improves decision-making. Viewing problems from different angles, emotional, factual, relational, provides comprehensive understanding. Considering potential effects on oneself and others enables decisions that are constructive rather than destructive. Perspective reduces blind spots, minimizes misinterpretation, and enhances the quality of responses. When a person evaluates situations holistically, choices are better informed and more sustainable. Consistency in response cultivates trust and stability. Whether dealing with personal challenges or interpersonal conflict, maintaining a consistent approach signals reliability and integrity.
Reactive individuals may escalate unpredictably, eroding confidence in their judgment. Deliberate responses, grounded in awareness and aligned with values, reinforce credibility and improve outcomes over time. Stability of action is as important as the correctness of the response itself. Preparation for potential problems strengthens the ability to respond intentionally. Anticipating scenarios, creating contingency plans, and mentally rehearsing possible challenges equips the mind with readiness. Preparedness reduces surprise, limits panic, and enhances confidence in decision-making. The more a person practices readiness, the more automatic deliberate responses become under pressure, creating a sense of internal stability, even when external conditions fluctuate. Internal dialogue guides response. Monitoring self-talk ensures that reasoning is informed and constructive rather than dominated by fear, doubt, or impulsive judgment. Cultivating supportive and rational internal dialogue reinforces deliberate action. The mind becomes a tool for evaluation, rather than a battlefield for uncontrolled reactions. Intentional self-talk increases resilience, enhances clarity, and strengthens the ability to meet problems without surrendering to emotional overwhelm. Decision-making under pressure improves with small daily practices. Everyday choices, from minor inconveniences to routine conflicts, provide opportunities to exercise intentional response. Each instance builds habit, neural pathways, and confidence. Practicing deliberate response in manageable situations strengthens the capacity to maintain composure in larger, more complex challenges. This accumulation of skill contributes directly to emotional stability and long-term happiness. Accepting uncertainty is part of deciding responses. Not all variables can be controlled, and unpredictability is inherent to life. Deliberate response is not about controlling outcomes, but about managing reactions. Embracing uncertainty reduces anxiety, prevents premature action, and allows for more thoughtful engagement with what can be influenced. Acceptance of the limits of control is a source of strength and clarity in response selection. Ultimately, deciding your response before problems decide for you is a practice in self-mastery, emotional regulation, and strategic thought. It shifts power from circumstance to intentional action, ensuring that life is navigated rather than endured. This approach reduces unnecessary suffering, enhances effectiveness, and fosters stability. Over time, the capacity to respond deliberately becomes a habit, a default mode that sustains composure, clarity, and satisfaction, even when life is challenging. By choosing responses intentionally, a person preserves mental and emotional resources, builds confidence in decision-making, strengthens relationships, and maintains a sense of control that is fundamental to happiness. The practice of deliberate response transforms adversity into opportunity, strengthens resilience, and establishes a foundation for consistent well-being that is independent of external circumstance.
Chapter 4. Build inner stability instead of chasing constant happiness. Life is full of experiences that swing between highs and lows. Many people spend their energy chasing happiness, believing it comes from achievements, recognition, possessions, or external validation. This pursuit, however, often leads to frustration, because happiness derived from external circumstances is inherently unstable. Life is unpredictable, and events rarely align perfectly with expectations. When joy is dependent on what happens outside of oneself, satisfaction becomes fleeting, unreliable, and constantly at risk. Building inner stability, on the other hand, creates a foundation that allows a person to maintain composure, clarity, and contentment regardless of external conditions. Inner stability is not about suppressing emotions or avoiding enjoyment. It is about cultivating a state of mind and being that does not fluctuate uncontrollably with external change. Inner stability begins with self-awareness. Understanding thoughts, feelings, and habitual reactions provides insight into why the mind seeks happiness from external sources. Observing the patterns of desire, attachment and expectation uncovers the mechanisms behind disappointment and restlessness. Awareness allows recognition of when thoughts and behaviors are reactive rather than reflective. By identifying moments when the pursuit of happiness is fueled by external validation, the mind can redirect energy toward practices that develop internal balance and self-sufficiency. Routine and consistency are foundational to inner stability. A predictable structure in daily life provides the mind and body with security. Routines do not eliminate challenges, but create a sense of order that reduces susceptibility to emotional turbulence. Simple daily practices, such as waking at a consistent hour, dedicating time to reflection or journaling, and engaging in mindful physical activity support stability. These routines serve as anchors, reminding the mind that stability is cultivated through consistent habits rather than contingent upon changing circumstances. Mental regulation is crucial in building stability. Thoughts, especially those focused on what is missing, desired, or unfair, can destabilize emotional balance. Training the mind to observe without immediately reacting to these thoughts creates space for intentional action. A person can acknowledge desires, concerns, or disappointments without allowing them to dictate mood or behavior. This mental discipline strengthens resilience and reduces the power of external events to disrupt internal equilibrium. When mental patterns are under conscious direction, stability becomes a reliable resource rather than a chance occurrence. Emotional regulation complements mental clarity. Emotions arise naturally and are part of the human experience, but when left unmanaged, they can dominate decision-making and cloud perception. Techniques such as focused breathing, sensory awareness, or reflective acknowledgement of feelings prevent emotions from spiraling. Recognizing, naming, and accepting feelings without judgment allows for balanced responses to both positive and negative circumstances. Emotional regulation builds stability by ensuring that mood is not a hostage to unpredictable events or interpersonal dynamics. Grounding practices enhance inner steadiness, connecting with the present moment through sensory awareness, deliberate breathing, or bodily attention provides a stable point amid mental chaos. Grounding directs attention away from imagined scenarios, regrets, or anxieties, and toward concrete, observable reality. Consistent practice reinforces a sense of control over the mind and body, creating an internal anchor that remains firm despite shifting external conditions. Grounding transforms the experience of life from reactive turbulence to deliberate engagement. Acceptance is a cornerstone of stability. The mind often resists circumstances that do not align with expectations, creating suffering. Recognizing what is present without exaggeration, denial, or suppression allows the mind to operate effectively within reality. Acceptance does not imply passivity, it is an acknowledgement of facts that informs strategic action. When a person accepts the current situation, energy is directed towards solutions, adaptation, or constructive engagement, rather than wasted on resistance or frustration. Acceptance fosters clarity, reduces emotional volatility, and strengthens the capacity to maintain equilibrium in all circumstances. Values-driven focus supports inner stability. When decisions, actions, and attention are aligned with deeply held principles, external fluctuations have less influence over well-being. Values act as internal reference points, providing guidance when events are unpredictable. By centering life around what is genuinely important, integrity, learning, connection, growth, stability is reinforced because external events cannot easily disrupt a mind guided by purpose. Clear prioritization reduces susceptibility to distraction, impulsivity, or emotional disruption. Perspective strengthens resilience. Recognizing that life is composed of both favorable and challenging experiences creates a realistic understanding of what to expect.
Expectations aligned with reality reduce the intensity of disappointment and mitigate the extremes of elation. Understanding the ebb and flow of events encourages patience, measured response, and balanced perception. When perspective is cultivated intentionally, inner stability is maintained even as external circumstances fluctuate rapidly. Self-reliance nurtures stability. Dependence on others for emotional equilibrium or validation introduces vulnerability. Developing the ability to find calm, clarity, and purpose internally ensures that external changes or interpersonal dynamics do not destabilize the mind. Self-reliance is not isolation, it is the capacity to maintain inner coherence while engaging with the world authentically. A self-reliant mind approaches challenges with resourcefulness, confidence, and composure, strengthening resilience and consistent contentment. Reflection and evaluation enhance inner steadiness. Daily or periodic reflection allows assessment of thought patterns, emotional responses, and behavioral habits. This practice provides insight into triggers, vulnerabilities, and areas for growth. Reflection is not judgment, it is honest observation that informs intentional adjustment. Through consistent evaluation, stability becomes reinforced because behaviors, reactions, and routines are refined according to observed results, minimizing unnecessary disruption and increasing effectiveness in navigating life. Physical care underpins mental and emotional balance. Fatigue, poor nutrition, or neglect of health amplifies emotional fluctuations and mental instability. Attending to sleep, movement, hydration, and nutrition directly affects the nervous system and cognitive functioning. A well-cared-for body provides a reliable platform for maintaining composure and clarity. Stability is not only psychological but physiological. Internal equilibrium requires the integration of body and mind. Mindful engagement strengthens consistency of presence. When the mind is constantly pulled into worry, distraction, or the pursuit of external pleasure, stability is compromised. Practicing attention to immediate experience, tasks, conversation, sensations, anchors awareness in the present. Mindful engagement reduces mental chatter, prevents overreaction, and allows for deliberate action. The habit of staying present reinforces inner steadiness as the mind becomes less dependent on outcomes or future possibilities for contentment. Detachment from outcome intensifies stability. When happiness is tethered to success, recognition, or external reward, emotional fluctuations are inevitable. Detachment does not mean disengagement, it means performing actions with full effort while recognizing that results are influenced by multiple variables beyond personal control. By valuing effort, integrity, and process over outcome, the mind maintains equilibrium regardless of achievement or failure. Detachment allows resilience and calm to coexist with ambition and action. Interpersonal stability contributes to personal balance. Consistent, thoughtful engagement with others, whether family, friends, or colleagues, reduces relational volatility. Emotional balance in interaction is maintained by observing communication patterns, setting appropriate boundaries, and responding thoughtfully rather than reactively. Stable interpersonal behavior reinforces internal consistency, creating a feedback loop where external relationships reflect and support inner steadiness. Learning to tolerate discomfort supports sustainable stability. Life inevitably presents stress, discomfort, and uncertainty. Attempting to avoid these experiences or escape unpleasant emotions creates instability when avoidance is impossible. By gradually building tolerance, the mind becomes resilient, capable of remaining calm and coherent even in difficult circumstances. Discomfort becomes a context for practice rather than a trigger for disruption, reinforcing self-sufficiency and emotional balance. Intentional decision-making strengthens internal equilibrium. Daily choices, even small ones, shape the state of mind over time. prioritizing actions that support health, reflection, purposeful engagement, and emotional regulation compounds stability. Decisions aligned with long-term well-being create consistency, reinforcing habits and internal coherence. Each deliberate choice reinforces confidence in the mind's ability to manage challenges and maintain calm regardless of external change. Gratitude practices anchor perspective, acknowledging elements of life that are already supportive, meaningful, or positive, does not create superficial happiness, but stabilizes the mind by balancing focus. Gratitude fosters recognition of sufficiency rather than lack, which reduces susceptibility to disappointment. Regular attention to what is already reliable strengthens internal steadiness, because the mind is reminded of enduring resources that persist regardless of transient difficulties. Problem solving from a stable state produces superior outcomes. Decisions made under emotional or mental turbulence are prone to error. Stability allows for clarity, creativity, and reasoned evaluation. When a person maintains internal equilibrium, challenges are approached systematically, and solutions emerge from considered judgment rather than reactive impulses. Inner steadiness is therefore both protective and productive, ensuring life is navigated effectively, even in complex or high-pressure situations. Consistency in emotional, cognitive, and behavioral patterns compounds stability over time. Habits that reinforce calm, clarity, and deliberate action build a resilient structure within the mind. As practices become ingrained, internal steadiness becomes automatic rather than forced. Daily commitment to routines, reflection, grounding, and values-based action consolidates stability as a persistent internal resource. Inner stability is reinforced through acceptance of impermanence. Life is constantly in flux, and clinging to expectations of unchanging conditions creates instability. Recognizing change as a natural part of experience allows the mind to adapt without distress. Stability arises from internal resources, awareness, and principles rather than dependence on consistent external conditions. This approach fosters a deep, reliable sense of equilibrium that persists regardless of circumstance. Ultimately, building inner stability instead of chasing constant happiness transforms the relationship with life. It shifts attention from ephemeral pleasures to enduring balance, from reactive engagement to deliberate presence, and from dependence on circumstance to mastery of self. Stability does not eliminate challenges, discomfort, or pain, but it provides a foundation from which challenges are met effectively. Decisions are clear, and emotional balance is preserved. A mind anchored in internal steadiness experiences life with continuity, resilience, and clarity, allowing for sustained well-being, even amidst change, difficulty, and uncertainty. By cultivating stability daily, a person creates a secure internal landscape where happiness is no longer a fleeting pursuit, but a natural byproduct of balance, self-awareness, and intentional living.
Chapter 5. Act kindly toward yourself during emotional low moments. Experiencing emotional lows is a fundamental part of being human. No one moves through life without facing periods of sadness, frustration, disappointment, or self-doubt. These moments are not failures. They are signals, indicators that something within needs attention, reflection, or care. Many people respond to emotional lows with criticism, self-judgment, or avoidance, believing that toughness or suppression will make them stronger. This approach, however, often intensifies suffering and prolongs emotional distress. Acting kindly toward oneself during these times is a conscious decision that creates a supportive environment for recovery, reflection, and growth. Self-kindness is not indulgence or passivity. It is the recognition that the mind and body are interconnected, and that how we treat ourselves during vulnerability profoundly influences resilience, clarity, and future emotional regulation. The first aspect of self-kindness is acknowledgement. Emotional low points often carry an internal narrative of shame or frustration, making individuals feel weak or inadequate. The initial step is simply recognizing what is happening without judgment. Observing the emotional state, whether it is sadness, disappointment, or fatigue, allows for conscious awareness instead of unconscious suppression. Naming the emotion, describing it in practical terms, and acknowledging its presence is an act of compassion. This acknowledgement reduces the power of judgment, creates clarity about what is felt, and establishes the foundation for intentional care. Acceptance accompanies acknowledgement. Many people resist negative emotions, believing that they must immediately be eradicated or replaced with positivity. Resistance generates tension and prolongs suffering because the mind expends energy fighting something that is naturally occurring. Accepting low moments as valid human experiences allows space for processing emotions fully and honestly. Acceptance does not equate to resignation. It is the recognition of reality that informs measured and constructive response. By accepting the state of being, the mind conserves energy and focuses on practical steps to restore balance. Self-kindness requires intentional internal dialogue. During emotional lows, the inner voice often becomes critical, punitive, or dismissive. Phrases such as, "I shouldn't feel this way," "I'm weak," or "I'm failing," amplify distress and reduce the capacity for rational action. Shifting the internal conversation towards supportive and understanding language changes the neural patterns associated with stress and reinforces emotional regulation. Talking to oneself as one would speak to a close friend, calmly, patiently, and with encouragement, builds resilience and restores perspective. This internal nurturing creates a safe mental environment in which clarity and stability can return. Physical care is an essential component of acting kindly toward oneself. Emotional lows often manifest physically through fatigue, tension, or discomfort. Ignoring bodily needs exacerbates psychological stress. Attending to rest, nutrition, hydration, and movement supports the nervous system, reduces physiological stress responses, and enhances the ability to think clearly. Simple practices like gentle stretching, mindful breathing, or taking a short walk can recalibrate the body, which in turn stabilizes emotions. Treating the body with respect during vulnerable moments reinforces the connection between self-compassion and practical restoration. Structured reflection enhances self-kindness. Journaling, meditative observation, or quiet contemplation provides a framework to process emotions without judgment or distraction. Reflecting on what triggered the emotional low, identifying unmet needs, and considering actionable adjustments empowers the mind. Reflection converts raw emotion into insight and strategic understanding, which reduces the likelihood of repeated distress. It is an exercise in honesty and gentle self-guidance rather than self-punishment. Boundaries are critical during vulnerable emotional states. Recognizing when external demands, conversations, or environments are overwhelming and intentionally creating space preserves energy and prevents compounding stress. Acting kindly toward oneself may involve saying no, limiting exposure to negativity, or prioritizing solitude when needed. Boundaries are not signs of weakness. They are protective mechanisms that allow for recovery, emotional processing, and restoration of clarity. They maintain stability and reinforce the value placed on one's own well-being. Perspective management supports kindness. Low emotional periods often distort perception, amplifying negative events and minimizing positive or neutral experiences. Stepping back to assess reality reduces cognitive distortions that exacerbate distress. Evaluating evidence, considering alternative viewpoints, and recognizing impermanent aspects of circumstances allows the mind to reframe experiences constructively. This measured perspective is a form of self-compassion because it prevents unnecessary self-criticism and provides a rational foundation from which to act. Micro-acts of care create tangible support during emotional load. Small, deliberate gestures, preparing nourishing food, listening to calming music, engaging in creative expression, or connecting with a supportive friend, contribute to a sense of stability. These acts are concrete demonstrations that the self is valued and deserving of attention, creating feedback loops of reassurance and emotional restoration. They reinforce the principle that kindness toward oneself is active and practical rather than abstract or passive. Mindful observation reduces the intensity of negative emotional spirals. By noting thoughts and feelings without immediate judgment or reaction, the mind separates from the impulse to over-identify with distress. This separation creates a psychological buffer, providing clarity and control. Mindfulness encourages curiosity rather than criticism and allows low moments to be experienced fully, while minimizing their disruptive power. The practice of observing without overreacting cultivates resilience and supports ongoing emotional equilibrium. Flexibility in response is an important aspect of self-kindness. Emotions cannot be forced, and rigid expectations about mood or recovery can worsen distress. Allowing oneself to feel, adjusting routines or expectations to accommodate emotional needs, and permitting gradual progress reinforces compassionate treatment of self. Flexibility prevents the imposition of harsh standards that often accompany low moments and encourages adaptive strategies for coping and restoration. Self-compassion includes forgiving perceived mistakes. Emotional lows often trigger reflection on past decisions or regret. Rather than ruminating on what went wrong, acting kindly involves acknowledging errors, understanding context, and identifying lessons without lingering in self-punishment. Forgiveness of oneself creates mental space for forward movement and emotional stabilization. It is an acknowledgement of human fallibility and a deliberate act of gentleness that strengthens resilience. Connection with supportive individuals amplifies internal kindness. Seeking guidance, empathy, or presence from trusted friends or mentors provides external reinforcement that internal self-kindness is valid and effective. Sharing struggles without fear of judgment reinforces perspective, validates experience, and encourages proactive coping. Supportive social interaction is a practical tool for emotional restoration while maintaining autonomy and self-respect. Structured problem-solving can coexist with kindness. Emotional lows often result from challenges that require attention. Approaching problems systematically with awareness of emotional state and capacity ensures that solutions are developed without exacerbating distress. Breaking challenges into manageable steps, prioritizing actions, and pacing efforts respects both the emotional and practical dimensions of well-being. This approach balances self-compassion with constructive engagement, demonstrating that acting kindly includes guiding oneself responsibly through difficulties. Reinforcing internal dialogue with affirmations enhances resilience. Statements that acknowledge value, effort, and inherent capability counteract the habitual negativity that can dominate low moments. These affirmations are practical reminders that emotional lows are temporary, that challenges are navigable, and that self-worth is constant rather than contingent on circumstance. Affirmations act as tools to stabilize mood, reinforce perspective, and support constructive action. Consistency in caring practices strengthens the mind's ability to navigate future lows. Repeated engagement in self-kindness routines, whether reflection, mindfulness, physical care, or micro-acts of attention, develops neural patterns that make supportive behavior habitual rather than forced. Over time, the mind internalizes these approaches, increasing resilience, reducing susceptibility to prolonged distress, and enhancing overall emotional stability. Patience with oneself is vital.
Recovery from emotional lows does not follow a strict timeline, and expecting immediate improvement often leads to frustration. Respecting the natural pace of emotional processing reinforces the principle of kindness, allowing thoughts, feelings, and energy levels to evolve gradually, without pressure, creates a safe internal environment where stability, insight, and clarity can emerge organically. Intentional engagement with restorative activities reinforces care. Reading, gentle exercise, creative expression, or spending time in quiet reflection replenishes energy depleted during low periods. These activities are not indulgences, they are strategic tools to support emotional regulation and mental clarity. By prioritizing restorative action, the mind signals that it values both the present state and long-term resilience. Gratitude practices can coexist with self-kindness, even in low moments. Noticing elements of life that provide support, comfort, or small satisfaction prevents emotional state from becoming entirely consumed by distress. Gratitude does not erase difficulty, but balances focus, ensuring that the mind is not overwhelmed by negativity. It reinforces perspective, enhances emotional recovery, and strengthens self-directed care. Ultimately, acting kindly toward oneself during emotional low moments is a conscious, multi-dimensional practice. It integrates acknowledgement, acceptance, supportive internal dialogue, physical and emotional care, reflection, boundaries, flexion. It transforms vulnerability into an opportunity for self-guided support, resilience building, and constructive reflection. This approach does not eliminate challenges or uncomfortable emotions, but provides a reliable method for navigating them with clarity, composure, and self-respect. The repeated application of these practices cultivates enduring capacity for emotional stability, strengthens mental resilience, and nurtures a compassionate relationship with oneself that supports consistent well-being, grounded perspective, and sustainable happiness.
Chapter 6. Regain control by fixing one small thing daily. Regaining a sense of control in life often feels impossible when everything seems chaotic or overwhelming. Many people wait for major changes, grand solutions, or external circumstances to align before they feel competent or capable. The truth is, control is built incrementally, step by step, and the most reliable way to restore it is by addressing one small thing each day. This approach transforms overwhelming situations into manageable tasks, giving the mind a sense of mastery, clarity, and progress. Focusing on one small action daily creates momentum, reinforces personal efficacy, and gradually restores confidence even during challenging times. Control is not a sudden state achieved through dramatic effort. It is a cumulative result of consistent, deliberate attention to the aspects of life that can be influenced and improved. Identifying what to fix first requires awareness. It begins with observing areas of life that feel neglected, unresolved, or chaotic. These can be practical matters such as an unfinished task, cluttered space, or delayed communication, or internal matters like a recurring worry, unresolved thought, or habit that undermines well-being. Awareness is the first step because unacknowledged problems cannot be addressed. By noticing even small disruptions, a person gains actionable insight into what can be changed immediately. Each small act of repair is a declaration that life is not entirely uncontrollable and that progress is achievable even in tiny increments. Starting with one small thing prevents paralysis from the sheer scale of problems. Attempting to fix everything at once creates stress, indecision, and a sense of futility. Choosing a single manageable action ensures that energy is focused, results are visible, and confidence is reinforced. The practice of completing one task daily, no matter how minor it seems, sends signals to the mind that capability is present. This repeated demonstration of competence strengthens resilience and gradually rewires the mental approach to challenge, shifting from feeling powerless to feeling capable. Consistency is key. Each day provides an opportunity to choose one action, address it, and mark progress. Even small actions accumulate into meaningful change over time. Completing a task, however minor, reinforces a sense of agency and builds momentum. The repetition of daily improvement develops neural pathways that make proactive behavior habitual rather than effortful. As a result, control becomes internalized, not dependent on external validation or dramatic shifts in circumstance. Strategic prioritization enhances this approach. Not all small actions carry the same impact on stability or emotional balance. Evaluating which action will generate the most immediate sense of accomplishment or relief increases motivation and effectiveness. Some tasks create order, reduce stress, or clear cognitive space more than others. Selecting the right small task each day is a deliberate process of aligning effort with maximum functional and psychological benefit. This strategic choice ensures that the sense of control is reinforced meaningfully rather than superficially. Breaking actions into micro steps amplifies progress. Complex or multi-layered tasks can feel intimidating, which undermines confidence and prevents action. Dividing tasks into tiny actionable steps allows the mind to focus on one piece at a time. Completion of each micro step provides immediate feedback, which reinforces motivation and a sense of control. Over time, these micro steps compound into larger achievements, demonstrating that steady effort, rather than overwhelming ambition, restores stability and agency. Acknowledging completion is part of the process. When a task is finished, even if small, recognition of the achievement reinforces internal competence. Many people fail to notice their own accomplishments, leaving effort unacknowledged and reducing reinforcement of control. Celebrating completion, in practical terms, strengthens the connection between action and outcome, encouraging continued effort and building a reliable sense of mastery. Visualizing improvement supports motivation. By observing the cumulative effect of small actions, a person can see how incremental efforts shape larger patterns of order, clarity, and stability. Visualization is not a substitute for action, but enhances engagement by creating a tangible sense of progress. It reminds the mind that effort, even in tiny doses, contributes to meaningful change over time. Consistency in action develops a disciplined mindset. Daily attention to small tasks trains focus, patience, and persistence. The mind learns to value effort and completion rather than being discouraged by the scale of challenges. This discipline becomes transferable across life, enabling the handling of larger responsibilities with calm, clarity, and confidence. Each day's small improvement is a building block for broader self-regulation and proactive problem-solving. Physical environment plays a critical role. Fixing one small thing in surroundings, whether organizing a workspace, clearing a countertop, or arranging possessions, has an immediate psychological impact. Visual cues of order reduce stress, increase clarity, and reinforce a sense of control. Tangible improvement in the environment serves as a constant reminder that personal action directly influences experience, strengthening confidence and composure. Attention to personal habits enhances recovery of control. Simple adjustments such as organizing time, prioritizing sleep, or creating a brief exercise routine address foundational elements of stability. These actions are small in isolation, but collectively stabilize emotional, cognitive, and physical systems. Establishing reliable habits reinforces predictability in life and creates a sense of control over both the body and the day-to-day environment.
Decision-making becomes clearer when focus is on manageable daily actions. When overwhelmed by multiple challenges, indecision can paralyze. By selecting one small task to act upon each day, the mind practices clarity, prioritization, and intentionality. This reinforces the capacity for deliberate action and reduces reactive behavior. The process trains the mind to approach complex problems incrementally, ensuring more thoughtful and less emotionally driven decisions. Completing even small tasks during times of stress or uncertainty produces measurable feedback that combats feelings of helplessness. Each small improvement provides evidence that effort leads to results, restoring confidence and stabilizing mood. Emotional states are strengthened because accomplishment reinforces self-efficacy, which is a fundamental component of resilience. Time management improves as focus on one small action develops. Breaking down tasks, allocating deliberate attention, and completing them consistently reduces wasted time and mental clutter. When the mind is organized and structured through daily action, productivity increases while stress decreases. Time becomes a controlled resource rather than a source of anxiety, reinforcing the sense of agency in daily life. Social and relational dynamics are positively influenced. Addressing one small thing each day in interactions, such as returning a call, resolving a minor conflict, or sending a thoughtful message, restores reliability and presence. These consistent actions foster trust and reduce interpersonal tension, which in turn reinforces a sense of competence and control in the social environment. Reflection on daily progress consolidates learning and confidence. Reviewing completed actions, noting challenges overcome, and acknowledging improvement strengthens self-perception and guides future decisions. Reflection transforms experience into knowledge, ensuring that each day's effort informs subsequent actions and enhances strategic thinking. The practice of consistent reflection also builds awareness of personal patterns, strengths, and areas for growth. Self-compassion integrates with action, recognizing that small improvements are valuable, even if imperfect, prevents discouragement. Perfectionism undermines progress, whereas appreciation of incremental gains sustains motivation. Self-compassion allows the mind to act consistently without being trapped by fear of failure, encouraging ongoing engagement and reinforcing the perception of control. Long-term vision is supported by cumulative small actions. Each day's improvement, while minor in isolation, compounds into significant transformation over time. The mind begins to perceive that control is not dependent on dramatic change, but emerges from repeated, intentional effort. This understanding reinforces commitment, reduces overwhelm, and strengthens strategic approach to life challenges. Problem solving is enhanced through the process. As small improvements accumulate, the mind gains experience in assessing situations, predicting outcomes, and implementing effective actions. Each completed task builds confidence in judgment, analytical thinking, and resourcefulness. Gradual mastery over manageable elements of life translates into competence when addressing larger, more complex challenges. Resilience grows naturally. By demonstrating to oneself that obstacles can be addressed incrementally, the mind internalizes capability and resourcefulness. Confidence in the ability to act, even when circumstances are difficult, reduces helplessness and fosters proactive engagement. Resilience is reinforced as each day confirms that control is accessible, achievable, and sustainable. Motivation is sustained through visible results. Daily accomplishments, even if small, create reinforcement loops where effort is rewarded with tangible outcomes. This feedback maintains engagement and reduces mental fatigue or resignation. The sense of progression fuels continued action, supporting consistency and the ongoing recovery of control. Self-reliance is strengthened. Addressing small matters independently fosters autonomy, decision-making, and accountability. Confidence grows because the mind recognizes the direct correlation between effort and results. This skill becomes transferable across life, reinforcing competence in personal, professional, and relational domains. Balance is maintained through small, focused improvement. Tackling manageable tasks prevents the accumulation of unresolved issues that can overwhelm the mind. By addressing one area at a time, energy and attention remain distributed and sustainable. Stability is reinforced because progress is paced, deliberate, and achievable, rather than chaotic or reactive. Gradual accumulation of small changes creates momentum. The mind begins to perceive that challenges are navigable, systems can be organized, and life can be improved incrementally. Each step affirms the capacity for agency, reduces helplessness, and strengthens proactive engagement. Momentum is the result of repeated action, confidence, and visible outcomes, combined over time. Ultimately, regaining control by fixing one small thing daily transforms both mindset and lived experience. It turns overwhelm into manageable effort, inertia into momentum, and despair into confidence. This approach cultivates resilience, self-reliance, and emotional stability. Control becomes not an abstract or distant concept, but a tangible, actionable process realized through consistent attention, deliberate effort, and small but meaningful daily improvements. By practicing this approach, life is experienced with greater clarity, composure, and empowerment. Each small action contributes to the reconstruction of personal agency, establishing a foundation where challenges are met deliberately, progress is visible, and internal mastery is regained steadily.
Chapter 7. Reduce suffering by letting go of mental resistance. Mental resistance is one of the most overlooked sources of suffering in life. Many people endure prolonged stress, frustration, and unhappiness, not because their circumstances are unbearable, but because their minds fight reality. When the mind refuses to accept what is happening, it generates tension, anxiety, and mental exhaustion. Resistance takes many forms: refusing to accept outcomes, clinging to expectations, holding on to anger, or replaying past mistakes repeatedly. Each act of mental refusal consumes energy, clouds judgment, and intensifies emotional discomfort. Learning to let go of mental resistance does not mean giving up or surrendering to defeat. Instead, it is a conscious practice of acknowledging reality, disengaging from unnecessary struggle, and choosing clarity and peace over compulsion. This process reduces suffering significantly and creates the mental space needed for thoughtful action, emotional stability, and consistent happiness. The first step in letting go of mental resistance is awareness. Recognizing the moments when the mind refuses to accept what is occurring allows the individual to intervene. Thoughts like "this shouldn't be happening," "I can't handle this," or "things must be different" are all forms of resistance. Observing these thoughts without judgment illuminates the internal patterns that drive suffering. Awareness is the foundation, because resistance can only be addressed when it is noticed. The moment the mind acknowledges that it is fighting reality, a choice emerges: continue resisting or release the struggle and regain composure. Acceptance is the natural companion to awareness. Accepting a situation as it is does not require approval, liking, or endorsement. It simply means recognizing the facts, conditions, and circumstances without trying to manipulate or deny them mentally. Acceptance allows the mind to conserve energy previously spent in futile struggle. Mental resistance often magnifies suffering because the mind is operating in conflict with reality. By accepting what is present, individuals reduce tension, create clarity, and open space for deliberate action. One of the most powerful ways to reduce resistance is to question the beliefs driving it. Many people resist because of deeply held notions about how life should be, how others should behave, or how events ought to unfold. Challenging these assumptions clarifies what is under personal control and what is not. Reframing expectations toward flexibility rather than rigid standards allows the mind to release unnecessary tension. When beliefs are aligned with reality rather than fantasy, resistance decreases naturally and mental energy can be redirected toward constructive engagement. Emotional regulation is critical in this process. Resistance often manifests as anger, frustration, anxiety, or resentment. By observing these emotions without acting impulsively, the mind separates from the compulsive need to resist. Techniques such as focused breathing, mindful observation, or short pauses during emotional spikes reduce reactivity and create mental space. Emotional regulation enhances clarity and prevents the compounding of suffering that occurs when resistance escalates unchecked. Reflection on control is central. Much of resistance arises from attempting to control what cannot be influenced. Accepting the limits of personal control does not reduce agency, it reallocates focus to areas where effort produces meaningful impact. Identifying what is within direct influence allows the mind to act deliberately rather than waste energy on impossibility. This distinction strengthens resilience and reduces unnecessary suffering by redirecting effort toward achievable outcomes. Releasing mental resistance requires letting go of attachment to outcomes. Many people tie happiness and security to specific results, events, or behaviors of others. This attachment amplifies suffering when reality deviates from expectation. Observing attachment patterns and consciously detaching from rigid expectations reduces internal conflict. Detachment is not indifference, it is the recognition that peace does not have to depend on external circumstances. This mental adjustment liberates energy and fosters a more balanced emotional state. Practical routines support the reduction of resistance. Daily practices such as mindful observation of thoughts, journaling emotional patterns, or creating structured moments of reflection train the mind to notice resistance early and disengage. Over time, these routines develop mental habits that make letting go more natural and automatic. The practice becomes not a forced effort, but an integrated part of thinking, perceiving, and responding. Self-compassion enhances the process. Resistance often triggers self-criticism, judgment, or harsh internal commentary. These patterns intensify suffering because the mind resists itself in addition to resisting external reality. Approaching internal experiences with patience, understanding, and care reduces the secondary layer of struggle. Self-compassion allows the individual to acknowledge difficulty without escalation, creating a mental environment conducive to letting go. Focus on the present moment diminishes resistance. Resistance frequently arises from mental projections into past regrets or future anxiety. Shifting attention to what is happening now grounds perception in reality rather than expectation. Observing current circumstances objectively allows the mind to respond rationally rather than react impulsively. Presence reduces the power of resistance because the mind is no longer caught in imagined alternatives or imagined injustices, but aligned with actual conditions. Language plays a subtle but important role. The internal phrasing of thoughts can reinforce resistance. Phrases like "I must," "I can't," or "I shouldn't" create mental pressure and amplify tension. Replacing these with neutral, observational language, such as "this is happening," or "I notice this," reduces conflict between mind and reality. The way the mind talks to itself shapes perception and either increases or decreases suffering. Conscious language choices are therefore a practical tool in releasing mental resistance. Physical practices also contribute to mental stress and tension manifest physically, creating feedback loops that intensify resistance. Gentle movement, breathing exercises, or brief periods of stillness signal to the nervous system that it is safe to relax. Reducing physiological tension supports cognitive and emotional flexibility, making the process of letting go more accessible and sustainable. The body and mind are interconnected, and care of one supports freedom in the other. Observation of impermanence aids in reducing resistance. Emotional lows, challenging circumstances, or uncomfortable thoughts are often magnified by the perception of permanence. Recognizing that all states change naturally diminishes the compulsion to fight reality. This perspective reinforces acceptance and patience and reminds the mind that resistance is not necessary to endure a situation that is inherently temporary. Gradual practice is essential. The process of letting go cannot be forced or rushed. Small, deliberate moments of acknowledgement, acceptance, and release build the capacity for sustained mental flexibility. Over time, the cumulative effect of these practices transforms habitual resistance into a natural pattern of mental ease, clarity, and focus. Visualization supports the process of release. Imagining the tension, expectations, or compulsions as separable from the self creates a sense of detachment without avoidance. This mental exercise reinforces the ability to observe, release, and act without being overwhelmed. Visualization bridges abstract awareness with practical experience, making mental letting go more tangible. Strategic redirection of energy amplifies results. Once resistance is identified and released, attention can shift to practical action or constructive reflection. This prevents the mind from becoming idle or seeking new avenues of resistance, ensuring that energy is applied toward meaningful outcomes. Productive redirection reinforces competence, stability, and satisfaction. Relationships benefit from reducing mental resistance. Letting go of rigid expectations, judgments, or attempts to control others improves communication, reduces conflict, and strengthens connection. People respond positively to those who exhibit flexibility and acceptance, creating more harmonious interaction. The release of resistance in one's own mind has a ripple effect, enhancing social stability and emotional well-being. Long-term resilience is cultivated. Each moment in which resistance is recognized and released strengthens the capacity for calm, clarity, and adaptability in future situations. Mental flexibility becomes a skill that is practiced rather than innate, and over time, it reduces the intensity and duration of emotional discomfort. The mind becomes more resourceful, capable, and stable. Mindful decision-making is support when the mind is not occupied with resistance. Choices are made with clarity and intentionality. Decisions are less reactive and more aligned with values, goals, and long-term outcomes. Reducing resistance increases the effectiveness of problem-solving and the likelihood of constructive responses to challenges. Internal peace is strengthened by this practice. Letting go of mental resistance reduces agitation, mental chatter, and unnecessary tension. The resulting sense of calm enhances perception, judgment, and emotional regulation. Peace becomes a default state rather than a fleeting condition, contingent on circumstance, reinforcing the ability to act effectively in the world. Suffering diminishes naturally. Resistance magnifies discomfort, prolongs emotional strain, and intensifies stress responses. By releasing the need to control, fight, or alter reality mentally, suffering decreases in both intensity and duration. Life becomes more manageable, and challenges are experienced with less internal conflict and greater clarity. Reflection consolidates learning. Noting moments when resistance was present, understanding triggers, and observing the process of release builds awareness and reinforces skill.
Reflection ensures that the capacity to reduce suffering through letting go becomes habitual, integrated into daily perception, and accessible in challenging circumstances. Ultimately, reducing suffering by letting go of mental resistance is an ongoing, intentional practice. It combines awareness, acceptance, self-compassion, presence, reflection, and practical strategies. By acknowledging reality, disengaging from compulsive mental struggle, and directing energy toward constructive action, the mind experiences clarity, peace, and stability. Releasing resistance is not passivity, it is a conscious choice to operate with balance, resilience, and emotional intelligence. Over time, this practice minimizes unnecessary suffering, strengthens mental and emotional resources, and enables consistent engagement with life that is grounded, intentional, and psychologically sustainable.
Chapter 8. Stay present instead of replaying painful thoughts. Replaying painful thoughts is one of the most common ways people sabotage their own happiness. When the mind continuously revisits past mistakes, regrets, or uncomfortable experiences, it keeps the body and emotions in a state of tension. This repeated mental rehearsal creates a sense of stagnation, amplifies stress, and prevents full engagement with the present moment. Painful thoughts, when relived over and over, feel immediate and urgent, even though they are memories or interpretations of the past. The mind reacts as if the experience is happening again, generating anxiety, sadness, or anger. Choosing to stay present is not an act of denial or avoidance. It is a deliberate practice of redirecting attention toward what is actually occurring now, rather than what has already happened. Presence allows perception, judgment, and action to be grounded in reality rather than colored by past suffering, creating a foundation for clarity, peace, and consistent emotional well-being. Awareness is the starting point. Noticing when the mind drifts into painful recollections creates the opportunity to intervene. Thoughts of past humiliation, lost opportunities, or mistakes tend to arise automatically, often triggered by similar situations, events, or sensory cues. Observing these thoughts without judgment creates a distance between the self and the mental content. Recognition is crucial because once the mind is conscious of the repetition, it gains the ability to redirect focus intentionally, rather than remaining trapped in habitual rumination. Awareness allows individuals to see the pattern, understand its impact, and choose presence as an alternative. Acknowledging the emotional response that accompanies these thoughts is essential. Painful memories often generate feelings of shame, regret, anger, or sadness. By acknowledging these emotions, the mind validates the experience without becoming overwhelmed. Suppressing feelings often intensifies internal tension, while observing them allows for emotional processing without losing the present moment. Emotional recognition acts as a bridge, connecting awareness of thoughts with conscious choice to remain engaged with current reality. Refocusing attention is the next step. Redirecting attention to sensory input, what is being seen, heard, felt, or smelled in the present, anchors the mind to the moment. The sensation of sitting in a chair, breathing, noticing surroundings, or feeling the texture of an object brings the mind out of replay mode. Attention is the tool for choice. By deliberately focusing on immediate experience rather than mental repetition, the mind is no longer held hostage by the past. Small, repeated moments of redirection gradually strengthen the ability to stay present, even when painful thoughts arise. Mental labeling of thoughts can reduce their power. Recognizing that a thought is a memory or an interpretation rather than a reflection of current reality creates distance. For example, noting internally, "This is a thought about a past event," helps prevent identification with it. Once the mind sees thoughts as passing mental events rather than absolute truth, emotional intensity diminishes. This process reinforces control over attention and reduces the automatic pull toward rumination. Breathing serves as a practical anchor. Focused breathing directs attention away from repetitive thought loops and into the rhythm of the body. Simple, steady inhalations and exhalations create a baseline of awareness, calming the nervous system and reducing the emotional charge of painful recollection. By observing the rise and fall of breath, the mind gains a stable point of reference, reinforcing presence and creating space for reflection or action rather than reaction. Grounding techniques complement mental redirection. Physical actions, such as feeling the floor beneath the feet, noticing textures in the environment, or engaging in a small task, redirect sensory focus outward rather than inward. These methods reduce the mind's tendency to spin into memory loops and support embodied awareness. When attention is anchored in tangible sensations, emotional reactivity decreases and clarity of perception is restored. Acceptance of the past without judgment strengthens presence. Painful memories or experiences are often compounded by self-criticism or regret about having felt a certain way. By observing the past neutrally, acknowledging that it occurred, and allowing it to exist without insistence on change, the mind releases additional tension. Acceptance does not mean liking what happened. It simply releases the unnecessary struggle that prolongs suffering. This approach fosters emotional balance and reduces the likelihood of repetitive mental replay. Developing curiosity about the present moment encourages engagement. Instead of dwelling on past pain, the mind can explore immediate surroundings, sensations, and experience. Asking practical questions, such as "What do I notice right now?" or "What can I sense in this moment?" shifts attention outward and encourages active observation. Curiosity fosters openness, reduces automatic reactivity, and increases capacity to respond intelligently to circumstances rather than be trapped by old patterns. Self-compassion is essential when painful thoughts arise. It is natural for the mind to gravitate toward negative experience. Reacting harshly by judging oneself for thinking about the past intensifies suffering. Recognizing the tendency to replay thoughts with patience and kindness allows for gentler redirection and reduces emotional amplification. Self-compassion reinforces the understanding that presence is a practice, not an immediate achievement, and that patience with the mind supports consistent improvement. Routine and ritual can facilitate staying present. Structured moments of mindfulness, intentional reflection, or brief exercises in observation train the mind to notice when it drifts into past recollections. Daily practice strengthens mental habits, making redirection toward the present more automatic over time. Consistency in practice enhances reliability, building a steady capacity to engage with the now, regardless of stress or emotional intensity. Reframing thoughts without denial reinforces presence. When painful memories surface, the mind can reinterpret their meaning without changing facts. Observing lessons learned, noticing resilience, or acknowledging personal growth shifts attention from emotional suffering to constructive reflection. This process transforms recollection from a source of repeated distress into a moment of understanding and insight while maintaining engagement with the present moment. Behavior alignment supports the mind. Engaging in purposeful activity, completing small tasks, or focusing on meaningful goals redirects energy toward tangible outcomes. Action rooted in the present anchors attention and prevents the mind from becoming absorbed in memory loop. Purposeful engagement stabilizes emotional state, reinforces competence, and strengthens the sense that life is lived actively rather than in mental replay. Social interactions reinforce presence. Engaging fully in conversation, listening attentively, and observing others' cues demand attention in the moment. Presence in relationship practice provides immediate feedback, reduces the likelihood of mental wandering, and strengthens social connection. Emotional energy that might otherwise fuel rumination is redirected into productive engagement with the world. Journaling can serve as a controlled outlet for processing past pain.
Writing down memories, feelings, or reflections channels the mind's need for attention to past events into structured form. Once captured in writing, the mind is free to focus on current circumstances, reducing repetitive loops. Journaling combines acknowledgement of past experience with intentional disengagement, supporting mental clarity and emotional regulation. Cognitive flexibility enhances the ability to stay present. Observing when thoughts begin to loop and deliberately shifting attention builds the skill of mental agility. The mind learns to notice patterns and choose focus rather than reacting automatically. This skill strengthens problem-solving, decision-making, and emotional stability, making presence a more sustainable state over time. Time-bound reflection prevents rumination, allowing a specific, brief period for thinking about a difficult memory or problem contains mental energy rather than permitting unlimited replay. Once the time is concluded, attention is redirected to present activity. Structured reflection trains the mind to acknowledge without becoming absorbed, promoting balance between processing and engagement with life. Gratitude amplifies presence. Noticing what is available, functioning, or positive in the current moment encourages attention to reality rather than past suffering. Awareness of tangible aspects of life, comfort, relationships, opportunities, or sensory experience grounds perception, diminishes the power of negative memories, and strengthens emotional resilience. Gratitude provides a stable platform for intentional focus and satisfaction. Repetition of these practices develops skill. Staying present requires consistent effort, but over time the mind becomes trained to redirect natural. Neural pathways strengthen around attentive observation, emotional regulation, and sensory engagement, reducing automatic drift into painful recollections. Skill development ensures that presence is accessible, even under stress or emotional provocation. Internal dialogue is a tool rather than a trap. By noticing self-talk associated with past pain and reframing it toward neutral observation, the mind maintains awareness without judgment. For example, recognizing "this is a memory, not reality," separates thought from identity, reducing emotional escalation. Conscious dialogue strengthens perception of control and supports mental clarity. Physical health influences mental presence. Adequate rest, nutrition, and movement stabilize energy and attention, making the mind less susceptible to dwelling on negative experiences. The body provides a foundation for cognitive and emotional stability, ensuring that presence is achievable rather than fleeting. Care of the body reinforces care of attention. Finally, staying present transforms how life is experienced. The mind becomes more responsive, emotions more regulated, and decisions more deliberate. Painful memories no longer dictate emotional states, and attention can be applied to meaningful engagement, growth, and satisfaction. Presence does not erase difficulty, but reduces unnecessary suffering by ensuring that life is experienced moment by moment, rather than replayed in past pain. The practice of staying present fosters resilience, clarity, and emotional stability, creating a consistent foundation for happiness even during challenging circumstances.
Chapter 9. Strengthen emotional endurance through consistent daily choices. Emotional endurance is the capacity to remain steady, clear, and composed despite the challenges, disappointments, and pressures that life inevitably brings. It is not about suppressing emotions or pretending that difficulties do not exist. Rather, it is the ability to experience feelings fully without being overwhelmed by them, to respond with intentionality instead of reaction, and to sustain composure over time. Strengthening emotional endurance does not happen overnight. It is cultivated through repeated, deliberate daily choices that shape habits of perception, reaction, and mental regulation. Each choice reinforces resilience, gradually building the capacity to navigate adversity with balance and insight. When emotional endurance is developed consistently, it creates a stable foundation for decision-making, relationships and personal growth, allowing individuals to maintain a sense of equilibrium regardless of external circumstances. The first element in strengthening emotional endurance is self-awareness. Noticing the full spectrum of emotions that arise throughout the day allows individuals to understand their internal state. Anger, fear, sadness or frustration signal areas of the mind and life that require attention or adaptation. By observing emotions as they appear rather than immediately reacting, a person begins to separate identity from experience. This awareness creates a buffer between stimulus and response, providing the mental space to make deliberate choices that reinforce endurance. Awareness also reveals patterns, recurring triggers, habitual reactions, and tendencies to escalate or suppress feelings. Recognizing these patterns allows for intentional adjustments in behavior, response, and thought. Consistency in daily practice is crucial. Emotional endurance is not strengthened through sporadic effort, but through repetition and deliberate engagement. Simple daily decisions, how one responds to a minor irritation, handles criticism, or persists through inconvenience, contribute cumulatively to the development of stamina. Each small choice is an opportunity to practice regulation, patience, and clarity. Over time, these choices create neural and emotional pathways that support composure, resilience, and sustained equilibrium. The compound effect of consistent decisions shapes character and emotional capacity more profoundly than occasional grand gestures of strength. Regulating attention enhances endurance. The mind often magnifies distress by focusing excessively on perceived problems, threats, or negative possibilities. By choosing to direct attention intentionally toward constructive or realistic elements of a situation, emotional energy is preserved rather than drained. Awareness of thought patterns, deliberate focus shifts, and structured reflection prevent unnecessary escalation of stress. Attention management allows individuals to remain grounded, reduces impulsive responses, and fosters measured action in difficult circumstances. Acceptance of emotions as valid experiences is essential. Emotional endurance does not require rejecting or minimizing feelings. Frustration, sadness, or disappointment are natural responses to the events of life. Acknowledging emotions without labeling them as good or bad permits full processing without compounding suffering. Acceptance allows the mind to move from reactivity into reflection, where choices can be made aligned with long-term goals and personal values. This practice reduces the internal conflict that often accompanies emotional turbulence and supports a sustainable sense of equilibrium. Deliberate response replaces impulsive reaction. Emotional endurance grows when individuals pause before acting on feelings, allowing observation and evaluation. In situations that provoke anger, frustration, or disappointment, a moment of reflection creates space for a response that is intentional rather than reactive. Choosing to respond thoughtfully reinforces resilience, reduces conflict, and ensures that decisions are consistent with personal integrity and objectives. Over time, this pattern of deliberate response strengthens the capacity to handle increasingly complex or intense emotional challenges. Habits of reflection and self-assessment reinforce endurance. At the end of each day, reviewing actions, responses, and internal experiences provides insight into strengths, weaknesses, and areas for adjustment. Reflection consolidates learning, identifies patterns that may weaken resilience, and highlights moments when endurance was successfully applied. By examining choices in a structured way, individuals create feedback loops that continuously improve emotional stability and increase capacity for composure in future situations. Regular sleep, nutrition, exercise, and movement influence energy levels, focus, and stress response. A body in balance provides a stable foundation for emotional regulation. Physical exhaustion, hunger, or neglect of health magnifies emotional volatility. Integrating consistent physical care into daily life reinforces the ability to remain calm, clear, and present, even under stress. Endurance is strengthened when body and mind function in harmony. Perspective taking is a practical tool for sustaining emotional strength. Evaluating situations from multiple angles reduces automatic escalation of negative feelings. Considering context, motives, and potential outcomes creates a mental buffer that diminishes the impact of immediate emotional triggers. This practice encourages rational reflection, reduces impulsive reaction, and increases the capacity to navigate interpersonal and situational challenges with composure. Perspective taking also allows individuals to respond with empathy, fostering more constructive interactions and reducing the emotional cost of conflict. Goal alignment strengthens daily choice-making. When decisions are consciously connected to long-term objectives and personal values, emotional energy is preserved for meaningful effort rather than expended in reactive spirals. Clear priorities provide a reference point for action, reducing the influence of fleeting emotional impulses. Aligning responses with purposeful direction fosters internal consistency, resilience, and clarity. Daily choices grounded in values reinforce endurance by ensuring that emotional effort contributes to growth rather than exhaustion. Small challenges serve as opportunities to build capacity. Facing minor difficulties deliberately and responding with composure strengthens the muscles of endurance for larger challenges. Daily inconveniences, disagreements, or stresses act as practice fields for emotional regulation. Each successfully navigated moment adds to confidence, habituates calm response, and reduces the impact of future adversity. Viewing ordinary challenges as training opportunities transforms everyday life into a consistent environment for emotional development. Mindful observation of thought patterns is essential. Recognizing automatic reactions, self-critical narratives, or recurring anxieties allows intervention before emotions escalate. By observing thoughts without judgment, the mind gains freedom to choose responses aligned with composure and rational action. Mindfulness strengthens the ability to remain present and reduces susceptibility to emotional overwhelm. Over time, this mental discipline becomes habitual, supporting sustained endurance under diverse conditions. Social support contributes to resilience. Engaging with trustworthy, empathetic individuals provides perspective, encouragement, and grounding. Sharing experiences, listening, and observing others' composure reinforces personal capacity. Healthy social interaction offers external cues for measured response, strengthens emotional self-regulation, and provides feedback that reinforces daily choices aligned with endurance. Interaction with others teaches observation, patience, and balance, while fostering connection that sustains emotional health. Deliberate breathing exercises stabilize internal states. Controlled inhalations and exhalations regulate the nervous system, reduce immediate tension, and enhance clarity. Daily incorporation of simple breathing routines strengthens the capacity to remain calm during unexpected stresses. Breath becomes an accessible tool for immediate intervention, reinforcing endurance across various situations. Structured reflection on setbacks promotes learning. Every instance of emotional disruption provides insight into triggers, habitual reactions, and areas for improvement. Systematic evaluation identifies patterns that weaken resilience and highlights effective strategies for maintaining balance. Learning from setbacks strengthens endurance by transforming challenging experiences into deliberate growth opportunities. Boundaries protect emotional energy. Choosing what situations, interactions, or engagements to participate in prevents unnecessary depletion of mental resources. Establishing clear limits supports composure, focus, and sustainable engagement. Boundaries reinforce daily choice-making by preserving capacity for meaningful responses and reducing exposure to avoidable stresses. Gratitude enhances endurance.
Recognizing aspects of life that are functional, supportive, or meaningful anchors attention in constructive awareness. Daily acknowledgement of what is working, what is available, and what has been achieved reduces the mind's tendency to spiral into frustration. Gratitude shifts focus from deficit toward appreciation, creating mental stability and reinforcing the ability to respond consistently under pressure. Incremental progress builds momentum. Sustained emotional endurance is rarely the result of a single effort. Consistent small choices compound, strengthening resilience and stabilizing mental and emotional responses. Celebrating incremental achievements reinforces motivation and creates a positive feedback loop that encourages continued deliberate action. Over time, these daily practices create a sturdy, dependable foundation for managing stress, disappointment, and pressure. Internal dialogue shapes endurance, consciously shaping self-talk to support patience, rational reflection, and self-compassion strengthens emotional capacity. Phrases like "I can handle this moment" or "I notice this emotion without letting it control me" reinforce awareness, reduce impulsive reaction, and cultivate composure. Thought patterns that support presence, acceptance, and intentional action directly contribute to long-term endurance. Reflection on values maintains alignment. When daily choices are connected to personal principles, responses remain consistent even during stress. Clarity about what matters reinforces the mind's ability to prioritize long-term growth over immediate emotional reactivity. This alignment ensures that daily decisions support endurance, stability, and resilience. Environmental cues influence practice. Organizing surroundings, reducing clutter, and creating structured spaces support calm and focus. A stable environment reinforces mental stability and enhances the capacity to make deliberate choices, strengthening emotional endurance through repeated, consistent interaction with the present reality. Finally, strengthening emotional endurance through daily choices is about intentional practice, awareness, and alignment. Each day presents opportunities to observe emotions, redirect attention, regulate responses, and act with deliberate intention. Small, consistent decisions build cumulative strength, reinforce composure, and develop resilience that carries through larger challenges. Endurance is the product of sustained attention, deliberate action, and reflection. By making conscious daily choices that prioritize clarity, composure, and balance, individuals cultivate the ability to navigate life's difficulties without being overwhelmed, creating a stable, grounded, and psychologically sustainable foundation for ongoing happiness and fulfillment.
Chapter 10. Live intentionally even when circumstances feel unfair. Living intentionally in a world that often feels unfair is not an easy task. Circumstances, by their nature, are rarely perfectly aligned with personal desires or expectations. Life presents challenges, setbacks, and situations that appear unjust or beyond control. Choosing to live intentionally does not mean ignoring these realities. It means responding to them deliberately, making conscious choices, and taking responsibility for how energy, time, and focus are directed. Intentional living is an exercise of personal agency, a commitment to act in ways that reflect values and priorities rather than be dictated by circumstance, emotion, or external pressures. It is about constructing a life guided by purpose, even when external conditions are discouraging or disappointing. The first step toward living intentionally is cultivating awareness of the present moment. Awareness allows recognition of how circumstances are influencing thoughts, feelings, and actions. Observing situations without distortion or exaggeration provides a clear understanding of reality. This clarity is essential because it separates perception from reaction, allowing for choices that are rational, aligned with personal goals, and grounded in present opportunity rather than frustration. Awareness illuminates areas where control is possible and identifies where acceptance is required. Without clear observation, intentional action is impossible, and life tends to drift under the influence of circumstance rather than conscious direction. Acceptance of external reality is a cornerstone of intentional living. Life often presents situations that cannot be changed immediately, if at all. Resisting these realities or expending energy in denial only increases stress, frustration, and wasted effort. Acceptance does not equate to resignation. Instead, it creates a stable mental environment from which deliberate action can emerge. By acknowledging what is happening honestly, individuals preserve energy, maintain clarity, and position themselves to respond strategically. Acceptance releases unnecessary struggle, reduces emotional drain, and establishes a foundation for thoughtful decision-making. Defining values and priorities provides direction. Intentional living requires knowing what matters most and what actions align with those principles. When circumstances feel unfair or unpredictable, values act as a compass, guiding responses, decisions, and allocation of energy. Clarity about priorities helps prevent reactionary behavior driven by immediate challenges or external pressures. It ensures that choices reflect long-term objectives and personal integrity rather than temporary frustration or emotional impulses. Values anchor action, reinforcing stability and purpose in moments of adversity. Deliberate goal setting reinforces intentional behavior. Specific, achievable objectives create a roadmap for action, ensuring that effort is directed meaningfully. Even when external conditions are unfavorable, working steadily toward concrete outcomes maintains momentum and cultivates a sense of agency. Goals break larger challenges into actionable steps, making progress measurable and reinforcing the understanding that circumstance does not fully determine result. Intentional action is sustained by consistent attention to goals, creating a rhythm of purposeful activity that counters feelings of helplessness. Mindset shapes the effectiveness of intentional living. Viewing challenges as opportunities to exercise judgment, develop skill, or gain insight reinforces proactive behavior. Shifting focus from unfairness to actionable response increases resilience and reduces the emotional toll of adversity. Mindset is not about forced positivity, but about recognizing the sphere of influence and directing energy where it is most productive. This approach emphasizes personal responsibility and leverages circumstances as catalysts for growth rather than sources of defeat. Decision-making underpins intentional action. Living deliberately requires choosing responses rather than reacting reflexively to events or emotions. Every moment presents options: how to interpret a situation, where to focus attention, what behavior to engage, and how to allocate time and energy. Practicing intentional decisions strengthens agency, builds confidence, and reduces susceptibility to external pressures. Thoughtful evaluation before action ensures that behavior aligns with purpose and values, increasing the likelihood of constructive outcomes despite difficult circumstances. Managing emotional responses is critical. Life's perceived unfairness often triggers anger, frustration, resentment, or anxiety. Sustaining composure in these moments preserves mental clarity and supports effective action. Emotional regulation does not mean ignoring feelings. It means observing them, understanding their origin, and choosing responses that reflect intention rather than impulse. Controlling reaction allows decisions to be grounded in strategy and priorities, rather than driven by temporary emotional states, enhancing the capacity to navigate unfair circumstances productively. Daily routines reinforce intentional living. Consistency in habits, actions, and attention stabilizes focus and energy. Predictable patterns in nutrition, exercise, sleep, work, reflection, and personal care support the mind's ability to operate intentionally. Routine reduces decision fatigue, preserves willpower, and strengthens resilience. When life feels chaotic or unjust, routine provides structure that anchors action and sustains focus, ensuring that deliberate choices are made even under stress or pressure. Reflection and evaluation deepen intentionality. Regularly reviewing actions, outcomes and thought processes creates insight into what choices advance values and what behaviors undermine purpose. Reflection allows correction of course, reinforcement of productive strategies, and identification of areas for growth. It strengthens accountability, builds awareness of patterns, and supports continuous improvement. By examining daily experiences systematically, individuals maintain alignment with intention, even in the presence of external adversity. Focus on influence rather than control is essential. Many aspects of life are beyond immediate change, and expending energy on what cannot be influenced leads to frustration and burnout. Intentional living directs attention toward areas where action can produce results, whether personal development, relationships, or specific tasks. Recognizing limits while maximizing influence ensures energy is applied effectively. This approach preserves motivation, maintains engagement, and reinforces agency, even when external conditions are challenging. Building resilience through small, consistent actions is key. Daily choices, no matter how minor, compound over time to strengthen character, fortitude, and persistence. Completing tasks, honoring commitments, practicing patience, and choosing constructive responses develop endurance that withstands unfairness. Incremental practice reinforces confidence, reduces susceptibility to stress, and cultivates a proactive approach to life. Strength grows gradually, and consistent effort provides a sense of control that counterbalances external unpredictability. Accountability strengthens intentional living. Accepting responsibility for actions, decisions, and outcomes, regardless of circumstance, ensures that life is guided by principle rather than reaction. Accountability reinforces self-respect, cultivates discipline, and builds trust with oneself and others. It acknowledges that while circumstances may